Hi, and welcome to Stressed, the podcast to develop your stress resilience. Being ambitious and successful while living a happy life is possible. Learn how you can better cope with stress in day-to-day situations by applying tools and techniques that work for you. My name is Julia Arndt, and I'm extremely grateful that you decided to check out my podcast today. Let's get started. Hi, and welcome back to Stressed, the podcast to develop your stress resilience. My name is Julia Arndt, and I'm super excited that you are spending a little bit of time with me today, because today we're going to talk about your brain health and my brain health, actually, because Rob Martin, who I interviewed for this podcast episode today, is a specialist in brain health, and he actually scanned my brain a couple of weeks ago, and we are talking about my own brain health results, and of course as well how you can keep your brain healthy, active and fit. And it's a super inspiring interview, and we actually recorded this interview for the second time, because the first time when he was here in my home in Lake Tahoe, the audio didn't work, and I was really sad because we had a really awesome interview, and then I realized afterwards that the technical side of things didn't work. So that was a little bit frustrating, but we made it work. Rob offered his time for a second interview, and yeah, it's super interesting. So I'm really excited to share this with you, and I hope you're going to take a lot of insights away from today's podcast episode. And a couple of announcements. Announcement number one is that my 8-week online program, From Stress to Empowered, when you are listening to the podcast today on Monday, the 16th of December, then today is the last day that you can register and sign up for the FSTE community in 2020. So last chance to buy the program and last chance to spend the program live with me together. We're going to have 30-minute coaching sessions every week starting on January 10th, where you're going to get specific input on how you can better master stress in your life, move from stress to empowered, and build a life that you love. And I would love to see you there. I have already a few participants from really amazing companies, and you will obviously have access to the exclusive community as well when you are joining the program. So I really hope to see you there. And announcement number two, I am sure that after listening to the podcast episode with Rob, you will be wondering if you can also scan your brain. And so for those of you that are really interested to learn more about your own brain health and to get your brain scanned, I want to offer to you to reach out to me and to schedule time with both me and Rob. So what we discussed with Rob is that we are open to come into your company and to offer a day of brain scanning and stress management training. Because what you will learn in today's podcast episode is that you will need to obviously know what's going on, and then you will need to make changes and adaptations to your lifestyle in order to keep your brain health up and running. So if you are interested, Rob and I have decided that we are going to make a really special offer to you and your company. You can invite us to come to your company, and Rob and I would come together where we are scanning your employees' brains, and afterwards I will hold a stress management training on how to best use the results that you will receive from Rob right away on the day off, and how you can implement changes in your life. So if you are interested, make sure to send an email to me, julia@bluemountainmindfulness.com. I will of course leave all of the contact details and all of the information in the show notes as well. And yeah, I would be super excited to come to your company and to help you understand how your brain functions and how we can work together. So that's all I wanted to share with you today. As always, if you are listening to this podcast episode today and you have a friend or family member or a colleague that you think this episode would be for, then I would really appreciate if you could share it with them, because I think it's all about sharing and all about helping people get better and help people understand why it is so important to take care of ourselves. And I always love to hear from you. It's really, really wonderful to get your messages. So if you would like to leave me a review and a rating on iTunes in order to help other people find this podcast, I would really, really appreciate it, because my mission is it to help as many people as possible make changes in their life, understand that stress management is a skill that everyone can learn, and that it is not so hard after all. So thank you so much already in advance for that. I am super excited that you're here. So same time, same place next week. But for this time around, let's get started with the podcast interview with Rob. Enjoy, Julia. Hi, Rob. I am so excited to have you a second time on my podcast because the very first time when we recorded the podcast live in my house in Tahoe, unfortunately, the technical side of things didn't work out and we didn't have any sound to our video. So I'm very excited to have you again today and to talk with you about brain scans. Welcome to the podcast.
Thank you, Julia. Thank you so much for having me. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. I know that the first podcast was truly magical, but unfortunately none of it was recorded. So we'll go to part 2.
Exactly. And I'm so excited that you're talking about magical, because your background today is so much more magical than the first time. Because if people are watching the video, you have a beautiful Christmas decoration behind you. And I'm very excited. That sets the stage very nicely.
Yeah, thank you. I will pass that along to Mrs. Martin.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, Rob, I'm super excited to talk with you today about the health of our brains. And before we jump in, I always ask this question to all of my podcast guests, because I think it's always interesting to hear where you are located and what you've been up to and which time zone you're in. So we give people a little bit of an idea of who you are and where you are.
Sure. So I'm in Sacramento, California, so Pacific Standard Time. We are a Boulder company, so we're one hour off from that. But I'm in California up until for another year or so, and then we'll relocate to Colorado.
Nice. Great. And what have you been up to this morning? It is almost 11 o'clock in the morning. And what have you been doing this morning?
Well, so talking with a couple of potential customers just outside of Tel Aviv, had a call with a biohacker group out of London, and talked with a excited clinician out of Calgary, Canada, all in one morning. I love Mondays now. That's my new tagline is I love Mondays.
Yeah. Wow. That's really impressive. Well, let me see. This morning I talked to Denmark, Copenhagen at 7 o'clock in the morning, because I interviewed someone from Microsoft for my book. And then I had a meeting with 2 people from the Bay Area, so not so far away. So I can't really compete with you today, but it's great. It's great to see that you're so internationally spread out and talking to so many different people that are interested in scanning their brains.
Yeah, people are really interested. People want to know, and that's the thing is, for the first time, you don't have to be sick or injured, and you can take a peek under the hood and understand exactly how the brain is functioning today based on a number of factors. So
yeah. Awesome. So before we jump into WAVi, which is the company that you work for and that does the brain scans, tell us a little bit more about yourself. Who is Rob and what have you been up to over the last couple of years?
So I've been in medical device for the last 20 years, cardiovascular, and led a number of different sales and marketing roles, leadership roles. And I took probably a year to decide whether or not to jump and take a leap of faith for brain purpose. And thankfully I did, because it's actually changed my life. It's changed the life of my family. It's changed family and friends, just because we're actually able to impact and quantify everybody's brain and where they are today. And so, but I've been in cardiovascular medical device sales for quite a long time, calling in healthcare, large hospitals, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm. Great. And so who do you work for today?
So WAVi Co. is the company. We're a Boulder company out of Colorado. Mm-hmm. And it's the idea of my boss, the CEO, David Oakley. Dr. Oakley is he's particle physics, was part of a couple of different Nobel teams. Mm-hmm. And so this was his idea which is an interesting story. A little over 10 years ago, walking into his primary care doctor's office and, not feeling like he was getting a lot of information about him, and nobody was measuring his brain. And he thought, well, this is an easy fix. This is probably a 3-year project. And so here we are, a little over 10 years later, and we're still at it. And so it's been an amazing story of Dr. Oakley and the collaborations that we've had up until this point.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's awesome. Tell me a little bit more about the story of WAVi, and maybe you have even one of the brain scanners with you, so you can hold it into the camera and show the people as well what it looks like.
I do. And, WAVi is a really interesting story. Part of the reason why I decided to make the jump. So Dr. Oakley partnered with Dave Jaffe. And so Dr. Oakley had the great idea of measuring brain performance, cognitive performance, and or decline.
Mhm.
And so he was able to work with a gentleman by the name of David Jaffe. And Dave Jaffe was the co-founder of the pulse oximeter, which is typically used in just about every hospital setting now, right? And so that led, so the software development of that and the beginning of the headset were formed. And then they ran into a longtime friend by the name of Scott Siemens, who is the founder of Crocs, which is the reason why I'm involved with WAVi. And so Scott took a look at this, and that's where the Croc material comes into
Mhm.
play. And so for those of you, it's got that Croc shoe, that rubber feel. It's
And it has
very
the
light.
funny, it has the super crazy color as well, the orange
We've
and
got,
gray.
well, yeah, this is one of the more muted ones. We have all the colors of the rainbow now. It's
Nice.
pretty cool. Pink, all the different colors. And so Scott he looked at the previous headset and says, okay, we can do better on this. He took it to his friends in Italy called Momo Design, and they design all the Ferrari helmets. And
Mm.
so you have a little bit of that amazing design and beauty of Momo and their intellect, along with the Croc material, the antimicrobial Croc material, all in a class 2 medical device that
Yeah.
is lightweight and easy to use. So it's a really interesting story. And so that's the whole thing about Dr. Oakley is he's collected a number of unique characters along the way. And so I'm just
Mhm.
fortunate to be one of those unique characters
Yeah.
that has joined the movement.
Absolutely. Very cool. And so you came to Tahoe a couple of weeks ago to measure my brain health and also to scan the brain health of my assistant, Kelly. And let's talk a little bit about the results, because I think maybe we can show best what WAVi can do by sharing the results of my own brain scans.
Sure.
So,
Yeah. So, yeah, first of all, I'm looking at your results right now, which I'll show up here in a second. So you have a great brain. Both you and Kelly had great brains. So clearly the things that you're doing in your life are making a difference, and we can quantify that truly objectively. I mean, that's the thing, is that there are a number of technologies that are out there that may be a little bit more on the subjective side. But the one thing about WAVi is that we've made it really easy for people to understand their brain performance, their cognitive performance. And so in a short 4-minute scan, which is what you went through as well as Kelly, we can give you those results. And normally you'd have to be in the hospital. Like I said earlier, you didn't have to be sick or injured to get an EEG. And that's what we do. We are looking at EEG.
mhm.
It's a class 2 medical device as far as the headset's concerned. And we're looking at evoked response potentials. So when you had the headset on, and the interesting story about the headset is that it's made of a material that we know of, the Crocs, right? The shoe, the Crocs.
Mhm.
And so it was a lightweight headset. You had a little bit of saline that was in the carbon fiber electrodes that was touching your scalp, right, through your hair.
Mhm.
And that's it. So you didn't have any connective gel. It didn't take an hour or two to set up. The results were done in 4 minutes, and I read the results for you right there.
Mhm.
And so the 3 things that we're going to look at are brain reaction voltage, brain speed, and your physical reaction. Then we'll give you a topo view of your brain from the top down.
Mhm.
And so for the first result that we show right here, and I'll try to point to it
I like
right
that.
here.
It's like a doctor. Okay, that
Yeah,
looks.
exactly. So this is your brain reaction voltage, okay? And it's based off of a normo range within your age. And so we're looking at, you had a 19 microvoltage. Normals for your range are 9 to 21. And so you can see that in in the view right here is that you can see that you're actually very high norm.
Mhm.
Okay. Phenomenal brain. And this is the brain's battery. Okay.
Mhm.
This is the acute. And so if you happen to have if there was a car accident, or for athletes, if they get a concussion on the field, this is the one that's going to take the hit, that the battery is going to
Mm.
take that absorption. And so, that's the thing that we need to do to make sure that we're good to go back to work, good to go back to, anything. So your voltage is actually phenomenal. So
Mhm.
that's the
Question.
first one.
Yeah,
Yeah.
question on that. So, if somebody is really sick, would that mean basically they have lower brain voltage, but they can recover and it can go back up?
Absolutely. The brain is resilient. That's a beautiful thing. I mean, I can speak to just me personally, since
Mhm.
we are the thermometer of the brain or the scale of the brain, we're not diagnostic. We're just giving you extra data that you normally wouldn't have had. And so for me personally, when I first scanned, almost 3 years ago, I had a 21 voltage and a very fast, I don't know, it was like 270. I don't know. It was on the faster side as far as the speed's concerned, which we'll go into a second. Um, and then I continued on with, the work-life imbalance that I had at that point. By the time I decided to jump to WAVi, I scanned the first week on the job, and my voltage had dropped down to 14, dropped 33% in
Mm.
that period of time, about a year and a half, almost 2 years. And so for me, Julia, it was sleep. Obviously, a little bit of stress, I think, that was involved in there, probably travel, probably lack of exercise, not a great diet. But for me, it was sleep. And I
Mhm.
felt it. I mean, but I couldn't quantify it. So now I had a baseline now to look at. Well, I was at 21, and
Mhm.
now I'm back to 14. So that's where I went on a journey to try to figure out my sleep. There's a
Mhm.
lot of amazing technologies out there. Me personally was using brain tap and understanding, the
Mhm.
brain waves, and helping me get into a relaxed state so that I could actually get some sleep. And so
Mhm.
scanned again 6 months later, and my last two scans have been 19 and 22 microvolts. So I've
Wow.
been able to get it back. And so I've got that ability to do that. And we can regen new neurons. We can always improve.
Mhm.
You just have to give the body a chance to do that.
Mhm. Very fascinating. Okay, let's go on. So the second result is which one?
So the second one right here is the brain speed. So this is how quickly your brain responds to an uncommon tone.
Mhm. Mhm.
And your result was 264 milliseconds. Normals is 248 to 322 milliseconds.
Mhm.
So again, a very, very, very fast brain.
Mhm.
And so what we're talking about with EEG that makes it a little bit different is we're talking about evoked response potentials. And so when you listen to those uncommon tones or those high pitched tones,
Mhm.
your brain responded to that. And we can measure that in 19 different positions of the brain.
Mhm.
But for you specifically, your fastest number was 264 milliseconds, really quick. Okay, and
Mhm.
so that tells me that your brain is responding to those uncommon tones, and it's truly objective. You can't just subjectively ask, "Hey, how you feeling?" This is your brain. Your brain is actually responding very well.
Mhm. Yeah, very cool. And uh, w- is there any influence, since we talked about it from that first perspective, that first result that we just looked at, in comparison to that second result? What would that influence? Like, is that the same thing? So if I'm sick or if I have a concussion or anything, then that also would go down, or is there any other factors that would influence that result?
So the main factors as far as everything go, when we talk about lifestyle and the brain reaction time, that's the chronic part of it. So the acute part is the voltage, the brain's battery.
Mm-hmm.
There are enough, everybody's different, so it's really hard to make one certain, you're different than me. And so, but it's always going to get down to sleep. It's always going to get down to lifestyle, as far as, are you exercising, and what kind of exercising? Some people exercise too much, and that's not good for the brain. And if you don't exercise at all, that's obviously not good, because we're not perfusing.
Mm-hmm.
Talking about nutrition, the right nutrition. I mean, there's a reason why you decided to move from Silicon Valley and live up in beautiful Tahoe. I mean, you're feeding your brain on a daily basis, going for walks, getting out in nature, the right supplementation. There's nootropics out there. There's a lot of different factors that go into that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's always the nutrition, the supplements, the sleep, and the exercise.
Mhm. So basically, all of the results would be impacted if I'm not having a healthy lifestyle. So it's not like one would stay stable because it's just a representation of my brain's reaction, for example, and the other one would go down or something like that.
Right. So, for this one, so, we've measured a lot of things from the neck down in our life: blood pressure, heart rate, blood panels. Maybe we'll step on a scale.
Number of steps.
Yeah, exactly. Number of steps. But so if you take that data and don't do anything with it, then it's just a data point. And so we're giving you an actual data point that measures from here and understanding exactly what's going on and how our lifestyle is affecting us up here for the first time in a very affordable, very efficient manner. So if you were to have a tourniquet on your arm for 15 years, what would that do to your arm? Probably not going to be good for you. So, but if we can actually quantify what's going on with our brain based on the things that we're doing to our body, now we have something pretty powerful.
Yeah. And I think we talked about this the last time as well, but I think what is really powerful about this is the same thing as if we would show a person what would happen to their bodies if they would smoke for 20 years. I think there's like these scans or programs nowadays that show kind of the deterioration. That's a very hard word for me.
Yeah.
It shows the deterioration of your body when you would be smoking for 20 years. And I think I compare that a little bit similar to the brain scan because it's kind of a check-in to show, hey, like here's the data, black on white. Here's how you've maybe lived your life over the last couple of months or years. And then having also that feedback of like scanning maybe 6 months later and being like, yes, I can actually see the results of my hard work in the brain scan, I think is really powerful.
Huge. Yeah. There's a reason why we're taking calls from concussion experts within the NFL, the NHL, talking with certain folks in the NCAA, Olympic teams and individuals. We just scanned a potential Olympic boxer not too long ago because they're concerned with brain performance. And so the cool thing about it is it actually we can quantify if there's been impact, right? So we can give that data and share that with the practitioner. But the beautiful thing is that you can actually tweak the performance of these athletes based on their diet and just tweaking it just right. And everybody's a little bit different, both in diet, the supplementation, their sleep, the stress. There's certain things, and we can measure all of that. Yeah. So it's great for the corporate executive who's trying to meet the stressful demands day in and day out, meeting the sales demands, the marketing demands, whatever that may be, as well as the athlete. It could be weight loss. Talking to weight loss companies, when you think of someone whose mitochondria is probably shot, their voltage is really low, their diet's not great, and that leads to all of that. And so if we can baseline them with a doctor's protocol and then measure them 30, 60, 90 days, now you have something that really, just like the cardiologist, Dr. Boone in Colorado. I never thought I'd be talking to cardiologists about brain performance, but Dr. Boone's taught us a lot about that. And he was in the same boat 7 years ago when he started scanning brains. And he said, well, I don't really know anything about the brains. I know there's a left side and a right side. But he said, once he started scanning these brains and basically creating a Boone brain age, because of the normal ranges in both speed and voltage, you can create something that's directional. It's not absolute. But if a 48-year-old like myself comes in and gets scanned because I come in for a bad heart, but I get scanned and I have an 80-year-old brain, he then goes back to the patient and says, okay, what do you want to do? And the patient's like, I will do whatever you want. And so his results are amazing because the patients actually take accountability. And, they, for whatever reason, the brain seems to be a little bit more responsive than someone if they had a bad heart. And so we quantify so many situations, whether it's youth, mental wellness in youth, to the elderly. I was just in an amazing facility outside of Marietta, Georgia, last week, and scanned 6 of their residents and some of their leadership team. And there was a brain. So you're 264 milliseconds. There was a 79-year-old that had 244 milliseconds.
Wow.
And he was an engineer, but that's just his brain. His brain's really fast. And so just as you want to optimize as an athlete, the elderly can still optimize and generate new brain neurons if they understand the right lifestyle, a little bit of exercise, eating the right things. The socialization is huge, being social.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's move on to the third result that we can see on the piece of paper that you're holding so nicely into the camera. Physical
Okay,
reaction
so
time.
the physical reaction time right here. Okay, so this is how quickly. So when you were doing the scan, you had the mouse in your right hand, and when you heard that high pitched tone, you clicked physically with that mouse, right? So
Mhm,
when you heard the high pitched tone, you
mhm,
click, and so we're capturing how quickly your physical response time is, in addition to how quickly your brain's responding. And so yours is 327 milliseconds. Normals are 254 to 366. So again, you're right in the norm right there,
mhm,
which is great.
mhm,
And so what's interesting is that your physical reaction time is a little slower than your brain. Your brain's super fast.
mhm.
And so, I mean, that's something that I typically see, but this is just how quickly you responded. I think if I do recall, I think you were careful on your clicks, like you wanted to make sure you clicked at the right time. And so I think you were thinking about it. Is that correct? Or do you
I
remember?
think, you know what? I think there were a couple of different points that day. I think I felt very anxious that day. I think there was just a lot of stuff going on. We had already spent a lot of time together before we jumped on the test, and there was definitely fatigue involved. And I think it said on your explanation below the third point as well that fatigue can impact the brain or the reaction time.
Sure.
Um, but yeah, you know, it's also interesting. I was also thinking about it afterwards, like what would happen if you would, for example, do the brain scan in the morning when I'm fresh and I'm wake up, you know, and versus maybe 2 o'clock in the afternoon when we're slowly going into like that dip of the day where we have maybe less productivity and less, you know, where we have just like that little dip in the day
Yeah,
where we
so
need to recharge.
it's no different than a scale.
Hmm.
If you step on the scale and I'm 175 pounds today, and I get on the scale tomorrow, I'm 176.
Yeah.
It's kind of the same thing. You're not going to see a big result. There are different nootropics and different things that you can take to increase your brain short term, but it's a long term play both in your speed and reaction time.
Hmm.
So the physical reaction time, you might be able to improve it. If you're more of a morning person, you might be able to improve it a little bit.
Hmm.
But again, it's a measurement today. It was a
Hmm.
measurement that day, right? And so
Yeah.
when we scan again, maybe we scan in January or February,
Yeah.
we can scan again and see that the changes that you're doing within your lifestyle,
What they impacted.
um, and just quantify it, right?
Yeah. Can you explain to
So
people
one of
what
the other things that
oh,
yeah,
one question. Can
go
you
ahead.
explain to people what nootropics are? Because I'm sure that maybe for some people this might be a very new word or term that they've never heard before.
Sure. There are a number of supplements you can take that specifically increase the performance of the brain.
Mhm,
So it's general. There could be modafinil. There could be a number of different things that I've heard. There's folks that are doing taking low dose nicotine, low dose psychedelics that increase and help rewire
mhm,
the brain. There's new pathways and that sort of thing. So um, I can't really speak to it. I don't, I can speak to modafinil. I've been new to modafinil. And so that's one of the things that I've been using personally, but
mhm,
yeah,
mhm.
it's a whole line of potential supplements that are out there for everybody to improve their cognitive performance.
Yeah, interesting. Maybe I'll get a specialist on the show for that specific topic as
Yeah,
well.
that'd be a good one.
Yeah, awesome. Cool. So you were just showing us the next part of the results.
Yeah, so this is your brain right here, Julia. This is your heat map from the top down. So let's see if I can get this right on the screen. So this would be the front, this would be the back,
Mhm,
right? And then
mhm,
the left and the right. And so this is your thumbprint of your brain.
mhm,
So the red is the higher activity that's going on with your brain,
mhm,
and then the blue is the not a lot of activity. But this is your thumbprint of your brain. This is your brain right here. My
mhm,
brain is different than yours, than Kelly's and everybody. So we think that this could be the thumbprint moving forward in the future. So that is your brain. Everybody's a little bit different. It's a beautiful brain. It's a great heat map as far as the activity and the voltage is concerned. So
mhm.
one of the better ones that I've seen, certainly.
Very cool. And then there was a result as well that was not so good, right? I want to talk about that as well because I do remember that. And I think that that result gave us an indication for anxiety and depression in our health history, right?
Right, right. So the one that you're referring to is the frontal alpha symmetry. And so this one showed up, you were at, what was it, zero point 0.5. Normals is 0.9 to 1.1.
Hmm.
It's correlatory towards anxiety and stress.
Hmm.
It's not an exact marker. But what's interesting is, in getting to know you, you're not one that I would think that would be anxious or stressed. But then when you actually opened up after the test and we talked about it, you're still trying to work on things to
Hmm.
help your own well-being, right? And it's the
Yeah.
reason why you moved from Silicon Valley and moved to Tahoe, right? And so everybody's got a different story. So we pick up on that. I scanned a UFC fighter, one of the top UFC fighters in their sport, and he has a successful business. He's got 50 fighters under him. I mean, he's a marketing and businessman as well as a fighter, even at his age. And his was off the charts, really high. And it makes sense because he's balancing a lot of different things. He's got a fight
Hmm.
coming up. He's got 50 fighters under him. He's got a gym. He's got the whole thing, right? So there's a lot of different things. This could be something that you would see a lot of, I bet, in corporate wellness. If I were to go back to my old company or go to any of the companies that are out there, you would pick up on a lot of this. So you're not the only one. You're not
Yeah.
the only one.
And what I loved as well, and you already talked a little bit about this, is that I could scan my brain again in 6 months. I obviously was diagnosed with depression and anxiety last year. So that is obviously in my chart and in my history. And maybe 6 months down the line, I'm still working on all of the tools that I have as well, in order to manage my stress that could improve, right? And that could go up.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. It would. I'm sure it will improve.
Yeah. And
Um,
you were saying that usually it's best to do like 30, 60, or 90-day scans, like not from one day to another, obviously, but to do it in like longer periods of time.
I think if you're trying to quantify lifestyle, I think that makes sense.
Yeah.
If it's an injury that clinicians are utilizing it,
Mhm.
then it could be more on the week to week basis, depending on what they're looking at.
Mhm.
But if we're looking at lifestyle, I think 30, 60 days increments, makes sense.
Mhm.
And so that you can make minor tweaks. We've scanned some folks who are, extreme athletes, and it doesn't always show up great for their brain. And so working out too much is almost as bad as not working out at all. And so you have to have that time to recover. And that's why there's so many great technologies out there to help you recover.
Yeah.
But I think for you, yeah, 30, 60, 90 days. So
Mhm. Very cool. And I just saw the date on the piece of paper as well. It's already over a month ago. Wow, that you came to Tahoe.
I
Time is flying
know.
by.
It
Crazy.
was it was dry and warm, and now you're under several
Now
feet of
we have
snow.
like, yeah, 2 feet of snow out here. Yeah, pretty crazy. I'm just looking at the other questions that I had for you. I just want to make sure that we are covering everything. So, how can we use brain scans today in stress management, for example? I think you touched already on a couple of different things, but I want to just kind of summarize it because you do always talk about brain wealth and health, and then at the same time, lifestyle choices. So, how does that all connect together, and what, when people are listening now, could do in order to have a healthier brain?
Well, so everybody's different. That's a loaded question. It's hard to answer,
Hmm.
but I think the biggest thing is to get a baseline.
Hmm.
You can't improve anything unless you're measuring it. And
Hmm.
so once you've got a baseline, then you have a chance to dig in and figure out, maybe it's diet for me, maybe it's sleep. For me, it's been sleep, but that made me go on to a whole hormone panel for me to really optimize my body, which makes me think about my diet. I've gone on a 60-hour fast, which is
Hmm.
something I never thought I'd do, never thought I could actually do,
Hmm.
frankly, and was able to do it. And I'm going to do again in January. I'll do another one because of the benefits of that. And so I'm trying to continually tweak because I know the impact of that is going to be positive for my cognitive performance. I don't want decline. I want to continue to regen new neurons, and that's it. So once you had a baseline,
Hmm.
then it's the chance for you to make those changes, and then to keep it, right, to keep those changes going and keep your performance at a high level when you're thinking quickly, and because you're sleeping well and you've got the right nutrition and you've seen part of it, Julia, is just seeing it. Like, I can't. So I'll ask you. I mean, what was it? I mean, physically, mentally, once you saw your brain, did it give you some confidence that, what, I've got an amazing brain and
For sure.
I want to keep it and I
Yeah.
want to continue to improve it. I mean, and that's what I see is when people see their brain, they're like, wow, that's my brain. What does that mean? And what can I do to improve it?
Yeah.
And they take the results and they run home, they tell their loved
Of
ones, they
course.
tell their neighbors, is like, this is
Yeah.
my brain, check it out.
Mhm.
It's the coolest thing.
Yeah. I mean, I'm even thinking, especially in the corporate world, which is obviously my target audience and the people that hopefully listen to this podcast, mostly, they are really interested in their own productivity, right? Like, how can I remain the high achiever that I am? How can I keep my productivity up? And I'm sure, like you said, if we would go into a company today without any preparation, without people being able to have a good night of sleep or have good nutrition that day, and also obviously in the past, we would probably see a lot of unhealthy brains. Like, we would probably see really fast brains, but we would probably see probably high levels of that frontal cortex, like high stress anxiety kind of levels as well.
Yeah, the frontal symmetry, the frontal alpha balance would be off when you take when the brain takes and the body takes an assault, and it could be it could be EMF too.
Mhm.
The cell phones that are out there and the 5G that we've got, it's not great for a lot of people. Some people are very sensitive to that. We're
Yeah.
starting to see more and more of the practitioners that we have that have WAVi are treating these patients. And so when that assault happens, the body, and that's the alpha balance, that alpha balance, those alpha peaks that I could show you on the WAVi report, retreat and go back into delta.
Mhm.
And so depending on how severe those assaults are, sometimes the brain just stays in delta, and that's where people just can't get out, they just can't function. And so if we can just get out, the thing I've been talking about lately is just getting out in front of it. Why wouldn't you want to know for the first time now,
Mhm.
and you're not sick, you're not injured, you're not in the hospital, spending thousands of dollars,
Mhm.
an hour test, you can get it in 4 short minutes and really understand what's going on. So could we, for corporate wellness, for the corporate executives, for the sales, the marketing teams, IT, could we be a little bit more productive if we understand truly the impact that's happening on their bodies right now? Working smarter versus just working longer, harder hours, having the 3 or 4 screens up, and the
Exactly.
toxic light that's going in your eyes, into your brainstem and into your brain,
Yeah.
there's ways to impact on that. And so if you have a baseline, if you're looking good, then you're looking good.
Mhm.
But I got to tell you, and you and I know this both, there's going to be some low scores. And so
Yeah.
in those environments, people are very competitive, just like the athletes, and they want to be, acting and feeling the best so they can perform well
Exactly.
for their companies.
Yeah. How did you know that it was sleep that you really had to work on? Because obviously WAVi and the brain scan doesn't show us like a specific metric that we need to improve on. It just says lifestyle, and we have to figure out ourselves what it is related to. What might
So
body.
that was my first attempt to try to figure this thing out.
Mm,
I've known for years that I haven't been able to sleep well.
mm,
The stress of the job, really wore it hard.
mhm,
There would be nights I'd be lying awake and chest would just be, pumping.
mhm.
Um, and I just, after so many years, you wake up too many times and you're just drained, and there's not enough coffee in the day to get you going. And the workout started to kind of fall apart. And so it's a cascade of events, and then the diet goes, right. And so I started with sleep. I learned a little bit about that, the toxic light,
Mhm,
the glasses that I wear at nighttime to help me get in my circadian rhythm.
mhm.
And then the other part of it is, like I said, the brain tap, which is really amazing. It's light and sound therapy for your ears and eyes. And
Mhm.
so it's almost a meditation for me, to have that when I go to bed. And sometimes when I don't have it, I've actually learned ways to do breathing and certain things for me to get into a good REM.
Very cool.
And so that, for me, that's what I believe is increased my voltage. But I'm going to continue to work at it and see how much I can improve it.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. I mean, I work with my one-to-one clients all the time talking about sleep, specifically when we're talking about stress management. And they always report back to me after a few weeks and months trying it out and getting into a more consistent rhythm of going to bed in the evening and waking up in the morning, how much like how much of a difference it made to them, and how powerful it is for them to be more focused and productive at work during the day, just because they go to bed maybe an hour earlier than they did before and sleep an hour longer, and that makes all the difference. Yeah.
Yep. And how would you know? I mean, unless you've actually baselined your brain. So now that you can actually measure something for very little, now you have a way to see the improvements, and that's the true satisfaction. When you see the improvements and you feel the improvements, that's a win-win right there.
Yeah. So when people are listening now, I'm sure they question now, how can I get my brain scanned? Like, how can I get to WAVi and do that myself?
Right. So you can go to our website. It's wavimed.com. So WAV as in Victor, IMED.com. And you can click on there and find a practitioner near you. And so it'll give you a global map of where our practitioners are. It's growing, which is great. We have a number of practitioners on the West Coast. We have a number in the middle of the country, and we're growing rapidly globally. So actually in Canada, there's been an amazing response too, which is pretty interesting.
That's really awesome. Yeah.
But as far as Australia, New Zealand, Israel, London, Sri Lanka, India, it's been fascinating to watch. So
yeah, and you've been a very busy person.
Very busy, yes. But this is truly my life's passion now, seeing the changes. I've seen some amazing things that our practitioners are doing with some folks who are they were pretty hurt. And they didn't have the greatest for whatever their situation was, but I've seen some amazing things. And of all the technologies that's out there, this is the one that quantifies the great work that they're doing. And it's just been powerful to watch. And so when people get a chance to see exactly what's going on with their brain and they make a change and then they see the improvements, I mean, it's so powerful. It's been fun to watch. So it's my new life's passion.
Yay. That's awesome. That's really cool. Great. Well, I always have a couple of questions at the end of each podcast interview, so I would like to move into those. And the first question I always ask is, what are you most grateful for?
I am most grateful for my family. And we've had an interesting last year plus, and so a lot of change. And but I am most grateful for my wife and my two daughters, my wife Susie and Lexi and Mila.
Okay, we're gonna say hi to all of them. I'm sure they're gonna listen to the podcast.
Yeah, pretty sure they say Dad's a dork, but we'll just keep on going.
That's okay. I'm looking at you with this amazing background. It looks very beautiful, and we see even some family pictures in the background as well, so that's great.
Thank you.
The next question I always ask is, are there some life values that have really come up for you over these couple of years and that you really live your life by, some wisdom or some values that really mark your life?
So I always put myself in other people's shoes to truly answer. I try to have those questions in my mind, like how would they want to be treated? How would they want to be talked to? What's good for them? Me personally, being sales for over 20 years, I don't like salespeople. And so for me to be in this for a long term, my principle is basically making friends and solving problems. So if I can build the trust and the relationships and the rapport, then I had the ability to maybe dig into some of their shortcomings, their problems that they have. And if I have a solution, then I provide it for them. And so those are the things I do, is put myself in other people's shoes and make friends and solve problems.
I love that. And there's a really great book by Dale Carnegie, How to Make Friends and Influence People. I always think about that book when people talk about putting yourself in other people's shoes, because that's what we need to do in order to really form powerful, long-lasting relationships and get what we want as well out of it.
That's right. Yeah.
Very cool. And so, talking about books, do you have a book that you find really fascinating or that has changed your life?
So there's one that I'm reading right now, and I've gone back and forth in different parts, but it's called Superhuman, Dave Asprey's latest book. And so I just find it fascinating on all things nutrition and sleep, all the different hacks that we can do to really personalize our own healthcare. And so it's a adventure that I'm on right now. And he's a wonderful gentleman and a very bright mind, obviously. And so that's the one that I'm diving in right now, is Superhuman by Dave Asprey.
Very cool. Awesome. And so what's next for you, Rob? What are your plans for 2020?
2020 is going to be exciting. We have some strategic planning that's going on right now. I've got about another week or so of travel starting Wednesday, and so finishing the year strong with that respect. But 2020, we're looking at expanding quite rapidly and scaling this thing out. We're a small company at this point, and so we're looking at some key strategic partners to help us scale this and share WAVi with the world. Because once people understand that they can access and dig in to see exactly how their brain's performing, and then they can make the changes, it's a super powerful thing. And that goes with our data set too. So every scan, assuming that everybody like yourself, you sign the IRB consent, goes in the cloud.
Mm-hmm.
And so we have about 25,000 scans in the cloud. Mm-hmm. And we have some amazing data sets, because all it is raw, anonymized EEG, 4 minutes of raw EEG data. Mm-hmm. And so we have some powerful data sets on 2-year onset of Alzheimer's and 3-year onset of Alzheimer's, ADHD, dementia, depression, PTSD, migraines, and every one of these waveforms have a certain characteristic. And so artificial intelligence is helping figure that out. And so could we get 5, 6, 7 years out onset of Alzheimer's? We'll partner and collaborate with anybody that wants to solve these problems, but we're going to be able to collect this data, this rich brain data. And so that's what WAVi is, trying to help the world think better and hopefully solve some of the bigger problems out there.
Yeah, that's incredible. I think data will be so huge on this and on all the different things that you just talked about. And I do actually have one more question, because I do know that you're traveling so much. How do you manage your sleep while you're traveling? Any tips for our listeners that are probably traveling a lot as well?
So limit the caffeine. Okay. I limit the amount of toxic light that goes in my eyes. So I have my true dark glasses that, again, they make the colors a little different as far as the laptop or the iPad or the television, but that enables me to keep in my circadian rhythm, whether I'm in a different time zone or not. Diet's huge. And then you got to find time to exercise. So I go now, whether I want to or not, and I'm going to hop on a treadmill. At least I can read or whatever, and then do simple things, just like small little HIIT workouts, that sort of thing. And then hopefully I have my brain tap, and then I can always put that on and keep the REM going.
Nice. Yeah. I think rituals are super important when you're traveling, to make sure that you're not getting out of rhythm when you are traveling, because that's so easy to do, right? So yeah.
Sugar's been a big thing for me too. That's the one thing that I've noticed in my body is sugar. So I try to eliminate the sugars, especially at night, if not most of the day. It's a tough thing to do in the US. Everything's got so much sugar in it, but try to eliminate that. That's been a big thing for me, so that I'm not churning all night.
Yeah, that's awesome. Great. So last question, if people would like to get in touch with you, Rob, how can they best do that?
So me personally, or just the company in general?
But whatever you are comfortable with, I would say.
So we're on every one of the social media platforms. So LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. So WAVi Med, you can find us there. Give us a follow. There's great information multiple times a week that we're sharing. There's so much information about cognitive performance and or decline and the things that are going on with that. So we're sharing that on our social media platforms as well. WAVimed.com is our website. And then me personally, you can look me up in any one of those, but my email, I can give you my email if that makes sense. Or
maybe you'll just give me your email this way.
Sure.
And I'll just put it in the show notes. So if people are interested to reach out to you, they can do that there. And then I think on LinkedIn, you're present as well if they want to reach out over LinkedIn.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yep.
Awesome. Well, it's been a pleasure. I'm sure that this time the video and the sound have been recorded. And I'm very excited to share this episode with my listeners and with my audience. And thank you so much for your time. I think it's incredible what WAVi is doing. And I'm very excited to stay really close and see what's happening in the next year as well.
We are excited too. And Julia, thank you so much for having me on, having WAVi part of your network and your storytelling. We can't wait for the future, and I look forward to your follow-up scan and see the
Yeah,
great things
same.
you're doing to yourself. So
Yeah, absolutely.
appreciate the time.
We will report.
Okay,
Thank you so much, Rob. Talk to you
thanks.
soon.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, sounds good. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Bye. If you enjoyed this episode, I would be extremely happy and grateful if you could leave me a comment and a 5-star rating. If you know someone who would benefit from the information I talked about today, please feel free to share it with them, no matter if it is your friends, your colleagues, and/or your family members. You will always find all links and a summary of the podcast in the show notes. It would be great if we could connect on Instagram or via email. You can find all details of how to find me in the show notes as well. In that way, you can also send me any questions that you might have. And as I mentioned, I also have a wonderful YouTube channel now where you can post comments and questions, so please reach out. I'm glad you're listening to this podcast. Thank you so much for your trust. With gratitude, Julia.